A beautiful young woman who had so much going for her, a family who loved and supported her, and a promising future ahead. Recently, British snowboarder Ellie Souter took her own life on her 18th birthday. When this news was released, the question on everyone's mind was why? Why did she feel the need to end it all when she had so many good things going for her? If she was feeling low, why didn't she speak to anyone? According to her father Tony, Ellie had missed a flight to ski and snowboard training, meaning she could not train, and this could have acted as a trigger for her suicide. She had a history of mental health issues, and the stresses of elite sports competition may have pushed her over the edge. He said, Ellie wanted to be the best and not let anybody down. She felt she'd let them down, she felt she'd let me down. Tragically, there are so many stories like this. The World Health Organization estimates that over 800,000 people take their own life each year. That's one person every 40 seconds. Up to 25 times as many again make a suicide attempt. So on the UK's only TV show dedicated to mental health and well-being, we're doing our bit for World Suicide Prevention Day, which is observed every year on the 10th of September. We must talk about suicide, and we must remove the stigma behind talking about what we're really feeling. And what are your thoughts on suicide prevention? Let us know by emailing info@chrissybshow.tv or post on our social media @ChrissyBShow on Twitter and Instagram, or The Chrissy B Show on Facebook. And here's what you're saying on Twitter. Jean Howell says, we are all one big family on this planet. Let's reach out and look out for one another. We are never as isolated and alone as we think we are. And Natasha Lee Bedford commented on our post on Facebook about Ellie Souter, saying, a lot of athletes get psychology and lifestyle support depending on their funding level. If they are not on funding, the support is less, but often times of need, they can access the support. The pressures of elite sports are massive, but they often provide people with the resilience for everyday life too. Swings and roundabouts, missing a flight happens a lot, and it does have an impact on performance. And if you miss major competition and tournaments because of a flight funding decision, it can be adversely affect the athlete. However, mental health affects everyone, and like her father said, it could take one trigger and one irreversible decision can be made. It's a very sad thing to read about. Well, everyone, we really encourage you to share this show to help us reach people who feel there is nothing left to live for anymore. So let me tell you about my guest today. We start with Angela Samata, whose partner Mark took his life in 2003. She was the last person to speak to him 15 minutes before she found him dead. Angela will be speaking about the impact that Mark's death had on her and her children and the suicide prevention work she's now engaged in. I also speak to our resident psychologist Dr Audrey Tang about why people feel that the only option is suicide. We'll also take a look at the story of Dese'Rae Stage, who nearly took her life, but now she's interviewing and photographing suicide attempt survivors across the US to show that no matter how bad it gets, they should never ever give up. Also on the show today, we have resident medical expert Dr Rob Hicks to answer your questions, but also to talk about the role of GPs in helping a suicidal person. And finally, we have on our resident nutritionist Hannah Richards, who'll be speaking about how nutrition has an impact on our mood and also telling us about her new book, The Best Possible You. So let's start our show with our real life story guest, Angela Samata. Welcome to the show, Angela.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm really happy that you're here today, actually, Angela, because this is such an important topic to talk about, and many people do shy away from it because they don't know what to say, they don't know how to react, and this is why we're doing the program today. Great. So can you tell us about Mark, first of all? What was your relationship like?
Well, our relationship was, it was funny because we met at school. So I was in the sixth form and he was in the fifth year, as it was then. And all of my friends were saying, why are you going out with somebody who's in the fifth year? And all his friends were saying, isn't this fantastic? You're going out with a sixth former. And our relationship started then, really. And then within about 12 months of meeting each other, we were expecting our first baby. Wow. Okay. So it was, so things took a slightly different route, but we were together for a long time.
Okay, and what was it like, the two of you together? Was it good, fun?
Well, it was just fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, it's just kind of, the world is your oyster. And Mark was a really, really funny person, and great fun to be around. And so it was a fantastic relationship. Yeah.
You hadn't actually, ever noticed did he have any mental health conditions, or?
Mark didn't, but I think towards the end of our relationship, you know, we'd been together a long time, and we had a 3-year-old and a 13-year-old, and I think, like lots of different relationships, you know, we'd started to feel as if maybe we needed a change, maybe we needed to be apart for a little while, and we were having those type of conversations at the time, really. And I think it's probably a natural, you know, as I say, we'd been together a long time, and so I think it's probably a period that lots of relationships go through. So things were fantastic, but they weren't always fantastic.
Okay. And then what happened? When did things start to kind of deteriorate a bit, would you say?
Well, I think that Mark never had any diagnosed mental health problems. He had never been in touch with any services, and he wasn't involved with any agencies at all. And I think for me, probably, you know, again, hindsight's fantastic, isn't it? You know, at the time, I just thought, oh, you know, maybe we need a bit of time apart. But when I look back now, I just wonder whether he was starting to suffer with some depression, or whether there was something else that, you know, if I'd have known then what I know now, I think I probably would have picked up on some different things. But back then, I didn't know that there was anything wrong.
Can you tell us about the day that Mark died?
Yeah, I think when this happens to you, you always remember, you know, minute by minute exactly what happened. And the day started in a very ordinary way. You know, I went to work, and the children went to school in nursery, and we said goodbye to each other at about 10 in the morning. And what I didn't realise was that was the last time that I saw Mark alive, and I never realised that indeed would be the last time. As the day progressed, I got phone calls from his work saying that he hadn't gone to work, and I tried to contact him on his phone and couldn't get hold of him.
What do you think had happened at that point? When you were...
I was really cross with him, I have to say, because I just thought, God, you know, we've got a 3-year-old, a 13-year-old, a house, you know, we can't afford for anybody to be losing their job right now. So I just thought it was very strange, it was very unusual. And so by the time I did speak to him at about 6 o'clock that evening, I'd gone to my mum's to collect the children. And I eventually phoned the house phone, as it was then, and he answered, which I was really surprised. And I was really cross, you know, and I very quietly just said to him, we'll talk about this when I get home. You know, you obviously haven't been to work, and that's not okay. And I said to him, you know, we'll talk about it when I get home. And actually, he then said to me that he loved me. And he said that he was sorry, and I presumed that he was apologising for the fact that he hadn't gone to work, when in fact he was probably apologising for the fact that 15 minutes later I arrived home to find that he'd taken his life.
Wow. I know it's hard to even describe, but what did you feel when you found him that way? He'd hung himself, hadn't he?
He had, at home. I think for me, I'd never ever experienced anything like it at all. I'd never. The closest thing I'd ever experienced to that was probably being in a car crash or something like that, you know, where you don't know that something's going to happen, and it's very shocking. I think the thing that probably was a saving grace in this situation was that when I opened the door and I found Mark, I immediately closed the door so that the children didn't see anything.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And I think, you know, in those situations when you look back, for me, that was a huge moment, because I think I'm not sure how I would have dealt with it if my children had seen anything. And so I stayed inside the house and phoned 999 and kind of almost went on autopilot, really, trying to you know, bring him down, trying to phone 999, and time seemed to kind of slow right down at that point. Eventually, and it was a very short space of time actually, it was just a few minutes, the emergency services arrived very, very quickly, and I was extremely well taken care of. And you're then in a process then, you know, of people being in your house and taking photographs and making sure that, you know, basically your house is a crime scene because there's an alive person and a deceased person. And so you're trying to deal with the shock of what's just happened, and the reality of it is that you're now in a process, really, in a criminal process, I suppose, really. But I was extremely well taken care of that night by all of the emergency services that came to the house.
Angela, can you describe then after Mark's death, how did you cope? How was it with the children?
Yeah, it was different for each of the children. Alexei was 13, and so his questions around Mark's death were very different to Benjamin's. He was 3, and so for Benjamin everything was very, very immediate. It was like, is daddy coming home today? Is daddy coming home tomorrow? And so for him it was really important that I was consistently telling him the same thing and basically telling him the truth. With Alexei, the night when it happened, I must have fainted at some point, and so the ambulance put me in the back. They put me in the back of the ambulance, and what they were doing was testing my blood pressure to check that I was okay. And it was at that moment that I asked if Alexei could come into the back of the ambulance, and it was so that I could make sure that he was okay and that he knew what I knew, which wasn't very much at that point, but. It just gave us a moment where we could just be straight with each other, and we could just have that moment in the middle of blue lights and chaos where we just connected, and it was in a calm way. And I think what that did was it stood us in really good stead for the next 15 years of questions and conversations. And I think for me, my attitude to the boys has always been the same. It's about being open, it's about being honest, and it's about telling them the truth as far as I know it. And so we were all, you know, they'd lost enough that night. They didn't need to lose their relationship with their mum as well. So I'm not saying it's always been easy, but I think, you know, at least we've got the kind of relationship where we can just kind of be honest with each other.
So it's a case that the boys at any time can come and sort of speak to you about this, and it's always like an okay subject to speak about.
Yeah, and sometimes I want to talk about it more than they do, and sometimes
really?
Well, yeah, because you know,
you're supporting each other, aren't you?
Well, we are, but I suppose sometimes they just want to be regular boys, and they don't necessarily want to talk to their mum about everything. But I'm kind of like, you can talk to me about everything. But I think for me, it's really about keeping those communication doors open, because the problem now is that I've spoken at enough conferences and I've sat in enough symposiums to know that my children are now in a high-risk group. And I'm in a high-risk group. People bereaved by suicide are in a higher risk group of taking their life than people who haven't been bereaved. And my children being male, and both being under 50, and both being bereaved by suicide by losing their father, that puts them in a really high risk group. And so for me, everything that I do and everything that I've done after Mark died has really been to try and surround my children with what they need to reach out if they ever feel like Mark, because he didn't tell anybody how he felt. He didn't reach out to any services or friends or me or anybody or his family. So I think for me, everything that I do really has to enable the boys to reach out if they ever need to.
Angela, I'm going to keep you on because we'd like to actually find out more about Angela's work with suicide prevention. So do join us after this.
I absolutely loved it. I thought it was really great. The moves, I really connected to it. It felt like just releasing all that negative, anything that was in my mind.
I'm speaking from someone that's actually been through like a bit of mental health myself. In the past, like there was a part of my life which was quite dark, and I know people can relate more to that. And for me, dancing is something that I've always loved, and I think for people out there, it's like you should always be doing what you love. It's a release, it makes me happy, and being happy is what prevents me from thinking about all the bad things out there that I don't need to think about, and that's the most important thing in life.
Welcome back to today's program, everyone, where we are doing the show especially for World Suicide Prevention Day. So my guest today is Angela Samata, who's been telling us about the suicide of her then partner Mark, and also Angela's been doing a lot of suicide prevention work since then, haven't you, Angela? So
Yes.
you felt it was really, really important, obviously, to get the word out, get people talking about it, and also for your own boys, your sons, to feel that they could speak about it if they ever felt, you know, the need to, or they sort of bottling up, making sure that they do talk to someone.
I think when it happened to me, I didn't know anybody else that had been bereaved by suicide, and I didn't know that I was, you know, I didn't know that suicide was the biggest killer of men under 50. I didn't know that there were 6,500 people a year that take their lives in the UK, and so for me, this had never entered our world before. So it just kind of made me quite determined that when I felt ready, that I would try and use our lived experience to benefit others, really.
So what did you then go on to do? How are you helping them?
Well, I went to a support group for the first time. I wasn't really sure what to expect, but actually it was amazing. And the support group was part of the Survivors of Bereavement by Suicide charity that then had about 25 support groups throughout the UK for people like me bereaved by suicide. And so I decided to try and give a little bit back to that charity that had helped me so much to work through this experience that we'd all had. So I became the head of that charity in 2010. So I was there running, you know, I had a fantastic board of trustees and amazing volunteers, but I was the head of subs for 4 years,
Okay.
But then I've done other things. You know, I often talk about my lived experience publicly, and I've spoken nationally and internationally about it. And also I was approached by the BBC to make a film about it, which was terrifying because, you know, it's
You did so well, though. You did brilliant on it.
It's just, you know, how do you want to put the worst time in your life on BBC One? You know, it's terrifying. But actually, I just thought I've spent a long time trying to get people to talk openly and honestly about suicide bereavement and suicide prevention, and it was time to put my money where my mouth was. So I said yes to making that film,
and it's called Bereaved by.
It was called Life After Suicide.
Life After, sorry.
It was called Life After Suicide, and it was first shown.
I watched the other day. Actually, it's absolutely brilliant.
Thank you. I worked with an amazing
very
team.
thought-provoking.
An amazing team of people that, you know, when you're talking about this stuff, and it's very personal, and you know, you really are putting the worst time in your life in the hands of strangers. You know, I couldn't have chosen to work with better people. They were absolutely amazing, and
it comes through in the documentary. It really does.
Thank you. It was nominated to BAFTA, which was a great thing to happen, and it won the Mind Media Award for the best documentary, mental health documentary in 2016. So you know, it's just been incredibly well received, and it was just such an honour to work with amazing people. You know, people who allowed me to interview them about the worst time in their lives. You know, so.
And you didn't stop there, because then you went on to do some suicide training, which I've also done, by the way. Again, fantastic resource. I really urge everyone to go and do that, because you do learn so much. Sometimes you think you don't know what to say, or if you say something you'll make things worse, but this training really does break it down and gives you different scenarios, different kind of people with different problems, and what you can actually say to them to help, not to make things worse.
I think it's the Zero Suicide Alliance who asked us to create some training for them, and I worked together with a woman called Jane Boland, who is the suicide prevention lead for Merseycare and NHS Trust, who does amazing work. And it was really about using the best of her clinical experience and the best of my lived experience to really produce something that would help everybody. And I think, you know, when somebody's feeling suicidal, sometimes they will tell the hairdresser or the taxi driver or the person who's making their coffee, or, you know, sometimes we end up having conversations in the least likely places. So for me, it was about how can we enable and give people the confidence to actually ask somebody, are you feeling suicidal? And if the answer is yes, how do we create something that will allow them to know what to do with the answer, you know, and to not be afraid to have that conversation? So we created See, Say, Signpost, and it's see the opportunity to have the conversation, say the word, you know, are you feeling suicidal? And signpost, and know how to really signpost to the to the organisations that are in your locality that might be able to help. And for me, it was very important that the training was free and that it was available to everybody. So you don't need to be clinically trained or be part of an organisation to do this training. It literally is available to anybody, and you can do it on your phone, and it takes 20 minutes.
I really, really want everybody to do this training. It's so important. I learned so much from it.
Oh, that's great.
Brilliant. I have to ask you, Angela, because viewers watching now that might have been through something similar that you've been through, and they think, I can't see myself moving on. I've lost the person that I love the most, for example, and I don't see life for myself anymore. What's happened in your case after Mark's death? Have you moved on? Have you got a new partner now? How are things now?
Moved on is a funny phrase, isn't it? Because I don't think you ever move on. I think you learn to live with what happened. And I think for me, I did meet somebody else, and I am in a brilliant relationship. And we have bought a house together, and we live together. And my 2 boys, adore him, and his children are amazing. And so, I think for me, it changed me as a person. But actually, I think it made me more sensitive, actually. I think it, now if somebody tells me that they're not okay, I'm not rushing off to the next appointment or, trying to get to the checkout in the supermarket. I hope that now I kind of stop and listen to that and really give somebody the time that they need. But I think for me, it was about, I was 32, I was a widow at 32. And I suppose you don't really think about what's life going to be like in 10 years' time, but actually, life's okay.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on to talk about your story.
Thank you for having me.
And I wish you all the best for the future and all the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Grows and grows. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right, brilliant. Well, everyone, now it's time to talk to our resident psychologist, Dr. Audrey Tang. Welcome to the show, Audrey.
Thanks for having me, Chrissy.
So again, another very vital show, I would say. We are doing this for World Suicide Prevention Day. So can you start off, Audrey, by telling us about suicidal tendencies?
Yes, clinically it's referred to as suicidal ideation.
Okay.
It's that idea that you want to go through with ending your life. And the research by Helsinki University has found that approximately 9% of the general population might have tendencies or ideation, suicidal ideation at some point. However, if you have a mental health issue, that rises suddenly to 77%, which is huge. And of that 77% of people with the suicidal ideation, the tendency, and the mental health issue, about 5% of those go on to make an attempt in the first year. So it's an incredibly important topic to be discussing, and an incredibly important topic to be referring to by name. We hate the word suicide, we tend to avoid it, and it is important to start saying it.
Okay. Audrey, why do you think it is that some people just cannot see the light at the end of the tunnel, and others, they kind of manage to pull through somehow?
One of the best ways of thinking about this is actually by looking at some of the disorders where suicidal tendencies relate. And this would be, say, borderline personality, anxiety, depression, and what they have in common is an overwhelming sense of emotion, whether it's sadness, apathy, or panic or fear. It's just overwhelming. And what we have to do when we talk about suicide is we have to remember to put our own prejudices, our own feelings aside, because the person who is in that particular state at that particular moment where they are considering ending their own life, they see that as a reasonable option. It's not a last resort, it is a reasonable choice based on all of the other choices that they can see from themselves at that particular time. So when you're in that overwhelming state, it's really important to have ways of managing yourself and getting help through that, because as you will know, as I know, even when we're stressed, maybe under some time pressure, we don't think quite so clearly. And if you imagine that almost 10, 20 times over, that's the intensity of that emotion. And so sometimes when you're in that particular state, the only way for you, the only choice for you is suicide. And that's really a very sad place to be, but that's the place we actually have to start work from. And we have to accept that and be able to work with that person.
What do you think then, a person that is maybe inclined towards suicide? What can they
Yeah.
do to help themselves?
There's a few things, and these come from an area of therapy called dialectic behavioural therapy. And there's two acronyms that I'm going to suggest, and one of them is called STOP, and this one's a little bit more basic, so this one's maybe not for when you're really overwhelmed, but it's a good technique anyway. The S stands for stop. Just if you're feeling I'm angry or I've been down this road before, just stop, because no matter what people are thinking, your life and your well-being is more important than other people's judgments or whatever it is that they might be thinking about. So stop. The T is take a step back.
Okay.
And just try and distance yourself from that situation, even maybe just physically walk outside. The O is to observe the behaviour. Now, this may be observing how I'm feeling. Are my muscles tense? Am I breathing really heavily? Almost describe some of that, because it changes your focus for a moment. And in that different mindset, you might be able to then go on to the P, which is progress in a different way, or progress mindfully with a different choice or course of action. So that's the STOP acronym. The other one is TIP. Now, I really like TIP. TIP is part of crisis management, and if somebody has suicidal ideation, suicidal tendencies, then it's really good to have a crisis plan in place, and that is, who do I go to, what do I need to do, where do I go, and TIP is one of those things. Now, T stands for change your temperature. If you are very hot, very intense, very worked up, go somewhere cooler. Even you can get really cheaply these ice packs, the ones that you just pull off the strip and they get colder. Putting that on your face, putting that on your neck, will just change the temperature for you. So temperature is one thing, or get warmer if you're too cold. That's the opposite side of it. I is change the intensity. So if you're feeling very low, very sad, very down, maybe do some star jumps or do something physical. Or if you're feeling very angry, then maybe listen to music in order to get some energy going. P is then paced breathing. So that's just breathing, maybe counting in for 4 and out for 4. Or counting seconds on a clock, if it's that way you don't need to even worry about counting the number of squares that you see on the pavement. And then the other P is for paired muscle relaxation, really focusing on tensing pairs of muscles like your hands and then relaxing them, or tensing your toes and relaxing them, even tensing your eyes and relaxing them. And so those things can distract the mind enough in order to be able to put the rest of the crisis plan in order.
Brilliant. Audrey, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
And we shall see you again very soon. Well, everyone, after the break, we have a very moving video by the Mental Health Channel of a project started by Dese'Rae Stage. Now, 11 years ago, she nearly took her own life, and now she's interviewing and photographing suicide attempt survivors across the US to show that no matter how bad it gets, they should never, ever give up. And also, Dr. Rob Hicks will be answering your medical questions, but also giving advice on what help is available from your GP if you are feeling suicidal. Hi, I'm Chrissy B, host of the UK's only TV programme dedicated to mental health and well-being, The Chrissy B Show, which airs on MyTV Sky 191 every Monday, Wednesday and Friday. Follow our social media on YouTube, Instagram and Twitter at Chrissy B Show, and our Facebook page, The Chrissy B Show. For more information, visit chrissybshow.tv. Welcome back, everybody, to our World Suicide Prevention Show. So now we have on with us Dr. Rob Hicks to answer your medical questions. Welcome to the show, Rob.
Hi, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Very important show today, Rob.
Yes.
And actually, I did want to ask, before we answer the viewer questions, I just wanted to ask what help is actually available from the GP when it comes to a person that's suicidal or maybe a family member.
Well, I think take a step back. The most important thing, if somebody is feeling like they want to end their life, it's very important that they tell somebody. And actually, that's the first step, and that's the most crucial step. And it may be the GP, and if so, I would suggest ringing up, making an emergency appointment, and say that you want to be seen straight away. You don't have to necessarily explain why, but just say, look, this is a really important thing. I want to be seen straight away. But ideally, you might want to just pick up the phone and phone a helpline, like the Samaritans, for example, where you tell a trusted friend or family member, who may not be aware of how you're feeling, or have been feeling, but we'll be able to listen and provide you with some help and support and guidance to where you can actually get professional help and support.
Okay.
So often, in the UK, there's also the NHS 111 service. So if you dial 111, you'll be put through to somebody who will listen to you and guide you in the process of finding the help and support that you need. But many people who may be considering ending their lives, they already have established links with mental health services. So if they have a mental health crisis team, for example, then they can contact them. But the key thing is to remember that the help is there right now for anybody who's feeling like their life is no longer worth living, and the help and support is there, and talking, counselling, medication, simply sharing the burden with somebody is important, because actually there's no reason why somebody should suffer and struggle on their own. Just tell somebody.
Brilliant. Rob, thank you. Now we are going to answer some questions now. And by the way, guys, if you see my phone here, it's because we're actually recording live for Facebook as well. So our viewers on Facebook are actually watching this as we go. So, Rob, first question, you ready?
I am indeed.
Is it true that you should eat food according to your blood type? I am blood type A positive, and the blood type program says that I should avoid red meat altogether, and I'm better off on a vegetarian diet. I really don't see myself becoming a vegetarian. There are lots of other things that are not allowed. Unfortunately, food that I love and that is healthy.
Simple answer to that, no. You don't have to eat food according to your blood type. This is a specific type of diet that some people support and promote. However, there's no scientific evidence to support any of the health claims that this diet sometimes makes. So, for example, that it helps you lose weight, or that it gives you more energy, or it helps you avoid certain diseases in the future. The reality is, I suppose my question for you is why are you considering this in the first place if you already have a healthy diet by the sounds of things? I think what's very important with this, people who do this diet, yes, they do lose weight, but the science and the research suggests that that's because of the restriction in calorie intake. It's not because of your blood group. And the concern that healthcare professionals and dietitians have about following diets like these that are considered really fad diets is that by excluding foods and food groups, you leave yourself open to nutrient deficiencies. So calcium deficiency, for example, iron deficiency, and these bring their own problems. So I would suggest to you, it's quite straight. It's not rocket science as far as managing weight's concerned. A healthy, balanced diet, lots of exercise, and enjoy the foods that you actually enjoy consuming.
All in moderation, just like our muffins here.
Yeah, in moderation, obviously. it's the doctor's get-out clause, that, isn't it? Moderation.
Okay.
Define.
All right, thank you for that, Rob. And one more question for today, Rob. I get extremely tired during the first couple of days of my period, to the point where I feel so exhausted that I can hardly move or get out of bed. I also feel quite dizzy. This only lasts a day, maximum 2 days. Is there anything I can take that can help me feel better and give me energy? I am otherwise healthy, I eat healthily and exercise regularly.
I think the first thing here, before thinking about what to take or what to do, is trying to establish why.
Yeah.
And I think you ought to have a checkup with your doctor to try and establish, whether this is simply one of the many symptoms of premenstrual syndrome that can continue, once your period starts. So tiredness and lack of energy and motivation are very common symptoms for many women as they approach their period and in the first couple of days of their period. What's going through my mind is that perhaps you're iron deficient. And you're losing iron every month with your monthly period, and so that would need to be tested for and necessarily and treated as appropriate. Or is what's going on actually that you already have a separate medical condition which is worsened, it's exacerbated every month by the stress of going through a period. So, for example, do you have a thyroid problem, an underactive thyroid? Do you actually have undiagnosed diabetes? Or are you depressed? And so it's the sort of building of the whole period issue that then compounds this other condition and makes you feel rotten, as it sounds like you are. I would suggest, increasing your exercise, sticking with your healthy diet as you're doing, making sure you get enough sleep. Try things that help you relax. Manage any stress, for example. So, for example, it might be yoga, it might be meditation. And if the periods are also painful and that's draining you as well, then think about taking some painkillers. But I would have a checkup, because your doctor may suggest actually using some hormone treatment just to regulate your periods and regulate the symptoms. But also they may suggest some counselling or even some antidepressants if it's bringing your mood down so low that actually what you've developed is depression alongside. So get yourself checked out, please.
Brilliant, Rob. Thank you so much.
My
and
pleasure.
we shall see you again next time.
You will
Thank
indeed.
you.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, now it's time to take a look at this video by the mental health channel of the project started by Dese'Rae Stage. Now, 11 years ago, she nearly took her own life, and now she's interviewing and photographing suicide attempt survivors across the US to show that no matter how bad it gets, they should never ever give up.
Live Through This is a project about life on the other side of suicide. It's a portrait and story project of suicide attempt survivors who want to tell their story and build awareness, because suicide is not a topic that we really discuss in mixed company. My name is Dese'Rae Stage. I'm a photographer in Brooklyn, and my role within the project is to give people a neutral, non-judgmental space in which to tell their story. I sit down with them, we just chat a little, get a rapport. And then I interview them, but the interview is actually more of a conversation. I really want it to be their voice, and I think that the fact that they know that they're meeting with somebody who has also been through that experience helps them to open up. And so after that, I make a portrait right afterwards. I try not to direct them, I just want them to look into my lens and put out there whatever they want to put out there.
My name's Jennifer Heusler-Gehring. I'm 43 years old. I'm an epidemiologist, and I tried to kill myself when I was 13 years old. I took some drugs and basically passed out and woke up the next morning and no one had noticed.
I'm not one of these people who has a story of depression that's lasted like their whole life. But when I went into a depression, it just got worse and worse. And I think I had so much guilt over not being able to pull myself out of it. For me, like, this isn't normal. This isn't how I felt before. Go away. And it didn't. And so I took pills.
The story of it, for Valentine's Day of this year, I was raped by my boyfriend. A few months ago, I was just sitting there, trying not to cut myself, trying not to think of all the bad things when they all crashed down horribly. And I decided I really did not want to handle any more of this. I couldn't. The meds weren't doing it. So I filled up a bathtub, put my head under the water, and started trying to breathe in the water. And right as I did that, everybody I loved, everybody I held so dearly, flashed through my head. And it was their words, their I love yous, their them being them, that I grabbed the edges of the bathtub and pulled myself out.
I've been very suicidal a number of times since then. I suffer from bipolar disorder. I don't suffer from it, I live with it. Mm-hmm. I was in the hospital when I was 22. I spent 13 days in a psychiatric ward. And that saved my life. I think if I hadn't wound up in the hospital, I would have wound up in a grave. And, you get diagnosed with a mental illness. You get told that this is what the rest of your life is going to be like. You get handed a bunch of pills, and they kind of send you on your way. And it's it's really terrifying. I mean, if I didn't have my family, I don't know where I would be.
Did you continue in therapy or did you?
Not as long as maybe other people did, but I did. But I have to admit, there was a lot of stuff I did on my own. You know, research and just a journey that took me where, you know, I am today. And I have to remind myself, like I always tell people this term, write it out. That's what I tell myself. I'm in this place. Doesn't mean I'm going to be here permanently. Doesn't, you know, this exact moment where I feel this. Ride it out.
I pull myself above the water. I remember that every single time. No matter how hard it gets, pull yourself above the water.
Is suicide still an option for you?
No, not anymore.
What would you want to say to a broader audience?
Remember the good things. Don't think about how far you have to go. Look how far you've come already.
Is suicide still an option for you?
I don't want it to be, but I mean, if I'm, and here it is, I'm there, you know, that honesty, you know, I would sit here and lie because that was, I never thought I'd get there in the first place. So how can I sit here and say that again? I highly doubt it because of what I've learned and the things that I've put into place and how I won't believe those lies again.
God, not right now, but you could talk to me in 6 months and I could tell you it looked like a good idea. I think at this point in my life, this disease has taken too much from me that it's not going to get the balance and that I'm not going to be part of my own demise, that I'm not going to play along. One of my big tenets that I live by is that the only constant in life is change. And I think some of it is for the better.
I've actually managed to convince the American Association of Suicidology that attempt survivors are worth listening to. There are a lot of gains happening in a short period of time with people talking about it, people writing about it, press covering it. The project is my baby, and it started out just this tiny little thing that I was trying to get people to pay attention to. And now they are, but it shocks me to hear later that it was cathartic or that it was really helpful with the recovery process or something, because I don't know, I didn't expect it to affect people in the way that it has, really.
Thank you very much to the Mental Health channel for that video, and if you'd like to know more about them, please do head over to our website, chrissybshow.tv, and click on our contributors section. Well, after the break, we have on our resident nutritionist, Hannah Richards, who'll be speaking about how nutrition has an impact on our mood and telling us about her new book, The Best Possible You. So don't go away.
Like, you don't talk about it, you could like keeping all those worries in can cause like depression and anxiety.
I think it's very important so that people know what's going on, and also know like how to fight it, and so they know that they can talk to people and don't feel scared.
Welcome back to today's Chrissy B Show, everyone. Now it's time to talk nutrition with Hannah Richards. Welcome to the show, Hannah.
Hi, Chrissy.
So now you have spoken before, Hannah, about how what we eat can affect our mood, and you're actually going to be telling us about a few things today that also heal the gut, which does have an impact on emotions, doesn't it?
Absolutely, a really big one.
Okay, brilliant. And also we're going to be talking about your new book, The Best Possible You, and it says a unique nutritional guide to healing your body.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. How's it feel to have your book?
It's it's exciting. It's been a long time. I'm very proud of it and excited.
It's already helped so many people, hasn't it? Even celebrities that have been
it's had a bit of press, so that's good. But the main thing is that it gets out there and it helps people take responsibility and helps people heal their lives as well.
Okay, what's actually in? Can you just briefly
tell us? So basically, every chapter in the book goes through an organ. So your heart, lungs, kidneys, liver, and the gut, and it tells you what foods you can eat. So tonight we're going to go through the gut chapter and all the foods that are good for healing the gut, emotionally and physically.
Brilliant. Okay, so take it away. We've got loads of stuff here.
I know. So I brought in all these things. So all these foods here are all in the chapter on the gut, and I'm going to make one of my favourite breakfasts. With a few different ingredients. And you can just have a look at everything, and if there's something you want to know about, just ask.
Well, there's some things that I've never seen before, such as this thing here. It looks a bit like sawdust.
What is this? You're not wrong. So that's slippery elm, and it's basically a gut healing supplement that really helps repair the insides of the gut lining.
Right,
so you can take it in a supplement form, but I just brought it in like that because it's quite interesting. People would never have seen it.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with making this. This is rye bread, and rye, believe it or not, rye, sourdough. They're all really good for your gut because they've got, they've got lots of different components to them, more so than your white bread or your brown bread that would be processed that you would get from a supermarket. And actually, people with gluten intolerance do much better on artisan breads such as rye or sourdough. So that they can get away with eating little bits of it. Obviously not if you're a celiac, but if you have a bit of an intolerance, these breads are much better for you.
Okay, I'm just going to move these out of the way so the viewers can see.
So this is kimchi, and so on your side of the kitchen, we've got lots of fermented foods.
Yes.
And when fermented foods are quite vogue at the moment, aren't they? We've got kombucha, which I'm going to talk about, which looks like that little sea creature in the pot. But the more bacteria you have in your microbiome, the more diverse foods you eat, the more bacteria you have, and then you're more likely to be happier, healthier, and stronger.
Okay.
If you eat a diet that looks all the same colour with no variation, then the amount of bacteria you will produce will be low, and then that can have a dire effect on your mood.
Right.
So it's really important to get something called polyphenols, for example, in your diet, which is something like all these here. Have you ever seen these?
No, they kind of look like parsnips, but they're carrots, aren't they?
But they're carrots, yeah.
I've never seen them this colour before.
So when you cut through, and look at this colour of these.
Wow.
I mean, they're really... And then normally we know courgettes as being green, but I've got a yellow one here.
And where did you find these, Hannah?
Well, you do have to go to your organic shops, really, or your local grocers, because these foods are all in season. And again, if we're eating foods in season, then we're eating foods that again have a much higher bacteria content to them.
Right.
So food that's come straight out of the ground, like these mushrooms. Remember, with mushrooms, if you are picking them, you just want to brush them off because the water absorbs into them. So just make sure you just give them a clean with a brush. But yeah, all these foods are high in polyphenols, and good bacteria loves polyphenol-rich food, and again, proliferates the gut bacteria, making you happier and healthier.
Wow, amazing.
So keep it really coloured.
Yeah.
So I've just put some kimchi on some rye here, and then where are my sardines? Like sardines?
I love sardines.
So sardines is a really cheap, easy way to get good omega-3s in, and omega-3s reduce our inflammation in the gut, in the brain, all over the body, and they're cheap and easy. Always have a tin of fish in your cupboard for emergencies, or just for dinner.
And it's filling, it's satisfying, isn't it?
It's so satisfying because you've got all your good protein and fat. And remember, it's your protein and fat that really do keep you satisfied.
Yeah.
I mean, there we go, so there's the sardines. And then we're going to add a little bit of rocket. Now, rocket is really good because it's a bitter. So do you want to have a little taste of it?
I do like rocket.
Yeah, and it's peppery.
Yes.
It's got a nice peppery
I already had some before. That's what I'm saying.
She's always eating everything.
Sorry.
So you just put a bit of bitter rocket, and what the bitter rocket does is help stimulate your digestive enzymes.
Yep.
So what most people do is they get to dinner and then in 3 mouthfuls it's gone.
Yeah.
And they haven't done any chewing, and so they haven't created any saliva, and in the saliva are enzymes to help break down the food. So normally, sometimes you can eat food. Who's eaten food before and you've eaten it and then suddenly you're hungry again? Because it's almost like nothing connected. Like, I'm still hungry.
Did I really eat?
Did I really eat? Exactly.
Yeah.
And then to top it off, we're going to put on, if you see, look at these tomatoes.
That's amazing. I've never seen one like this.
So these are heritage tomatoes. And I get, oops.
Oh. Courgette down.
I'm gonna use this green tomato here because I don't know, he just looks nice to me, and we're just gonna top it off there.
Nice. I want to try this bit.
You can. There we go. Been waiting for that. Bit of sea salt.
Crunchy and nice.
Bit of black pepper. And voila, a gut healing breakfast.
Lovely.
It's a bit Scandinavian. The Scandinavians love a bit of fish for breakfast in the morning on rye.
Yeah.
But it's really cheap, nutritious. There's more nutrition in that than any bowl of cereal you'll find.
Just standing here is making me feel really healthy. Imagine if we just eat all of this stuff.
Well, you could, you've increased your bacteria content.
Just breathing it in.
Just being here. And that's what they call rewilding. So the more you go outside, the more different foods you eat, the more variety you have, the more likely you are to increase your microbiome. And that's the key to having a healthy system, healthy organs, and being happy. A diet that's only got 2 or 3 things in it on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, is going to make your mood very low. Because depression is associated with low gut bacteria.
Brilliant. Hannah, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
And we'll see you again next time.
Hope so.
Thank you. Okay, everybody, so now it's time to go to my final thought of the day. So I'd like to thank all of my guests today, and especially Angela Samata, who spoke so bravely about what happened to her former partner Mark, and also about the brilliant work that she's doing today. And now I'd like to address you at home who are feeling suicidal or have felt suicidal in the past. Now, let me tell you something. I know exactly how you feel. I know that there are times when you hate living and feeling the way that you do, and it seems like it's never ending. It feels like you're suffering so much and you really can't see a way to ever feel happy. I know what it's like to feel that way. I know what it's like to feel trapped and like everything is just closing in on you. I know how it feels, almost feeling like you're not able to breathe because maybe you're having panic attacks. I know how scary it feels. I know how awful it feels, but I also know, sorry. But I also know how it feels to be on the other side, and I can't stand the thought of people thinking that this is it for them, that this is the only option for them. I can't stand the thought of people thinking that the only option that they have is to take their life, because I know that it's possible to get through what you're going through. I know that it's possible to have a completely different life. So what I would urge you to do, what I did when I was in your shoes, I didn't give up. There was a small, tiny bit of hope inside of me that things could change, and you need to listen to that voice. You really need to hold on to that, because that's what's going to get you through. That's what got me through. If you need help, and I'm really speaking now from my heart. If you need help and you want to talk to me, you can email me. Please do get in touch. Obviously, if it's an emergency, please do call the emergency services or any helplines that there are out there. But if you want to email me and ask for my advice and ask on what I did to get through the problems that I had, please do email me on chris@chrissybshow.tv. I promise you there is a solution. I promise you that things can get better. That what you're going through right now, what you're feeling right now, is not impossible to change. I know, and I can introduce you to hundreds of people that used to be suicidal but now have completely turned their lives around. What you're feeling now is just temporary. What you're feeling now, I know it seems like the only way to feel better is by ending it all, but that doesn't make sense. If you end it all, where's the opportunity for change? It's finished. So give yourself that chance, give yourself the opportunity, and you can change your life around, I promise you. Well, everyone, we have reached the end of today's program, but if you have a story that you would like to share with us, please do get in touch with us by emailing info@chrissybshow.tv. You can also tweet us @ChrissyBShow or leave a message on our Facebook page, The Chrissy B Show. And if you'd like to know more about my mental health journey, all you need to do is visit my personal website, which is mylifeafterdepression.com. Till next time, bye-bye for now.